Hi everyone, Canoopsy here. This is the new 2020 iPad Air 4, also known as the iPad Kinda Pro, and this is my full review. This video is sponsored by Skillshare, the best place to learn all the creative skills you've always wanted to learn. The first 1,000 people who join with my link in the description get a free trial of Skillshare Premium. Explore your creativity today. Okay, so in many ways, this tablet is basically just an iPad Pro, but at a more affordable price and missing a few key features, with a few additions as well. First, let's talk about the design. So the iPad Air comes in a variety of these new colors that are kind of muted, kind of pastel tones. I'm a big fan of the green one personally, but they all look pretty nice. The design is basically the same as the 2018 iPad Pro from front to back. It's thin, it's lightweight, feels great to hold, and works with the Apple Pencil 2 and Magic Keyboard, as well as really any other iPad Pro accessory. But with the brand new Fingerprint Scanner power button, try to avoid bumper cases that cover up that scanner because you won't be able to use it. Now, speaking of the Fingerprint Scanner, there is no Face ID, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. The Fingerprint Scanner in the power button is really a perfect position to have a fingerprint scanner. Many Android phones have done it, and they've been right pretty much all along. In some ways, it's actually better than Face ID. You just put your finger on it, you rest it there for like half a second, it unlocks. It almost always works, you don't have to look at the tablet, no swipe up, it just makes a lot of sense and I personally love it. There's dual speakers on this device versus quad on the iPad Pro, but they do still sound quite solid. There's USB-C for plugging in accessories, drives, and just charging up the iPad, and I'm very happy it's not Lightning on this device. At the back, unlike the iPad Pro, there's no ultra-wide camera or LiDAR sensor, just the single rear camera. And it's good enough for taking photos or videos if you really have to, as well as scans of documents with no issue. The front camera is good enough for video chats or if you want to show your face in online lectures. I personally don't, but it looks pretty good. However, it's still on the side of the tablet, not the top, so just keep that in mind. It's kind of still an awkward placement. Also up front, the bezels. They are definitely a little bit thicker than the iPad Pro if you see them side by side, but in daily usage, it's really not bad at all. This is no previous generation iPad Air or iPad 8, these are still super thin bezels, the tablet looks futuristic, it looks modern, it looks great. And with these slightly thicker bezels, the display goes down from 11 inches to 10.9 inches, which is really not a huge difference. The display is accurate, it's beautiful, it gets bright, and is excellent for all tasks, from watching videos to editing complex projects where color is important. This display is sick. Versus the iPad Pro, the Pro has a slightly brighter display at 600 nits versus 500 nits on the Air, but for my usage, the Air still gets plenty bright. I have no problems with it at all. But the bigger comparison point here is the refresh rate. Now, the iPad Pro has 120Hz ProMotion as we know, while the Air has 60Hz. There are definitely a few areas where 120Hz is a great thing. Swiping around the OS is smoother with a higher refresh rate, gaming with games that support 120Hz feels smoother, and writing and drawing with the Apple Pencil is of course better on the iPad Pro. However, Apple does magic with 60Hz on its devices, and with the smooth animations and the reduced Apple Pencil latency from iPadOS 14, the lack of 120Hz is not a big deal. Now, if you're buying your first iPad and Pencil, you'll be fine with the lack of this high refresh rate. Writing and drawing will still feel natural, and there's little to no delay from putting your pencil on the screen and drawing a line or writing a letter. It feels smooth. But if you're switching from a previous generation iPad Pro with 120Hz to this device, you will definitely notice at first, but within minutes, you'll likely adapt. I know personally for myself, I've used 120Hz on my iPad for about 2 years, and switching to this was really not a huge change. Now, you're probably dying to know, so I'll skip right to it. Performance. How does the iPad Air 2020 compare to the iPad Pro 2020? The Air has the A14 and the iPad Pro has the A12Z processor, and in the simplest of terms, the grand scheme of things, it's kinda the same speed. Now, the iPad Pro has 2 extra gigabytes of RAM, 6 gigabytes versus 4 gigabytes on the Air, and if we're talking benchmarks, which I don't like to focus on, the iPad Pro is better with some things, while the Air is better with other things. Things certainly feel faster on the Pro with 120Hz, of course, but in actual performance, in day-to-day performance and usage, the speed is about the same. Opening apps on the Air is fast, there's really no delays, multitasking works excellent, but maybe the Pro is a little bit faster and more capable with multi-apps because of the extra RAM. Not a huge difference though. Gaming is fast and smooth, you can play high-end games, more basic games, it's going to be a great, clean, smooth experience. And using creative apps like Affinity Photo and Designer, Procreate, and Lightroom, they all work perfectly even with complex multi-layer projects. I've had no issues with my personal projects, and chances are you'll be fine too. Video editing with an app like LumaFusion is quite a solid experience, and while editing thanks to the fast processor and iOS optimizations, you'll be able to edit videos that most computers, including my own, will have trouble with, except it'll be very smooth on the iPad. And when it comes to rendering, the iPad Pro is still the leader by a little bit. I put together a 30-minute 4K video test in LumaFusion and rendered it on my Pro and Air. The Pro finished first, but the Air finished just a short while after. So the Pro is still kind of the leader for intensive tasks like this, but really not by much. So as a summary of performance, I've pushed the iPad Air to its absolute limits just as I pushed the iPad Pro, and I've had no issues with speed whatsoever. So if you're worried that the iPad Air isn't fast enough versus the Pro, trust me, you'll be fine. And if you're worried that the new iPad Pro that you just bought is going to be slow versus the Air, it's basically the same. The Pro is a bit faster for some things, but as I've said about 5 times now or so, the Air and the Pro have very similar performance. It's pretty much the same. And for battery life, it's a full day of usage, no problem. I use my tablet for watching videos, typing up notes, drawing in Procreate, editing photos, and it always lasts, and I end most days around 30%-ish at around 10:30 at night. I usually just charge it up in the evening, or on lighter usage days, I tend to have around 40 or 50% battery left, giving me about 2 days before I really have to stop and charge the tablet completely. And this battery life is about the same versus the iPad Pro, where I have very similar usage time using the iPad every day. Okay, $200. You can do a lot with $200, and that is the difference in pricing between the iPad Pro and the new 2020 iPad Air. Besides the screen differences, camera differences, and specification differences, those are the only things that separate the Pro and the Air as two different devices. Besides that, they're pretty much the same, except one of them costs less. The one thing you may want to consider though is the storage options on these devices and how they correlate with the pricing. The base model Air is 64GB and tops out at 256GB, versus the Pro starting out at 128GB and going up to 1TB of storage. Now, depending on how you actually use your tablet, 64GB may just be enough, but for creative users doing creative tasks, we all know that 64GB is not enough on this tablet. So if you need more storage, this is where things get a little bit tricky between the Pro and the Air. So here's how I see it. Let's break this thing down. If you need 120Hz refresh rate or those extra camera features, you're sold on the Pro. If you know for a fact you can make do with 64GB or you have plenty of cloud storage, the $600 starting price of the Air is great. And if you know for a fact you'll need a lot of storage, like I mean a lot of storage, the Pro offers more storage tiers up to 1TB, as I mentioned. Okay, that was a lot. But in summary, if you do buy the iPad Air 2020, you're gonna love it. It's a stellar experience, a stellar tablet, and the iPad is a device that many of you know I personally love using. It's great for school, for creative work, and at the end of the day, just relaxing, reading a book, watching a movie, playing a game, it's excellent. And the fact that the great iPad Pro experience gets a bit cheaper is nothing but good news, and also makes me wonder what the future of the iPad Pro is like since these devices are just so close. This video was brought to you by Skillshare, an online learning community with classes about all the creative things you've always wanted to learn. Drawing, photography, design, animation, cooking, marketing, video editing, and so much more, it's all on Skillshare. And it's all taught by creative pros who are ready to help you fuel your creativity, curiosity, and your career. There are plenty of incredible classes, and even some iPad-focused classes like these ones from Robert Generette III, where he discusses the basics of drawing and illustration with the iPad and pencil. It's great. The first 1,000 people who join Skillshare with my link in the description get a free trial of Skillshare Premium, so you can explore your creativity today. And after your trial, it's less than $10 a month with an annual subscription. Thanks to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. So I want to hear your thoughts on the new 2020 iPad Air. Do you think it's worth it, or do you prefer the iPad Pro? Also subscribe and hit the join button next to the subscribe button to become a channel member today. There are some great perks and access to some of the wallpapers I've shown in this video, as well as wallpapers from past videos that all of you have been asking about. That's where you can get them. And that's it. Thank you for supporting my channel, and thank you for watching.